Generation 1 of Skins is one of the best dramas ever put on TV, and one of the most influential shows in the UK, inspiring pretty much every teen drama that came out after it. The best aspect of these first two seasons is undoubtedly the complexity of the main cast, all of which are flawed to an unbelievable extent, but still manage to be likable, and it's this likability that has maintained the following the show continues to have. It's a very difficult balance to pull off, and when achieved successfully, isn't open to be remade fundamentally, as even the most minimal changes can topple the Jenga tower of unprecedented balance. The show is so meticulously constructed and purposeful that it can't be replicated, not even by the same show in its following seasons. Despite that, the American network MTV saw this as a suitable challenge and wanted to present the show across the pond to an audience who are subject to stricter TV laws. And before I instill any undeserved suspense in you lot, it's bad. It's really bad. So this is how I plan to tackle this beast. I'm gonna analyze the 10 biggest reasons for its badness, one for each episode of the season, and I'm going to explain exactly why the UK version does it so much better. Afterwards, we'll look over and discuss the many controversies that stemmed from Skins' production that ultimately led to MTV's biggest failure, one that the company is now so desperate to be swept under the rug, hence the lack of a second season. Needless to say, MTV really don't want anybody to remember or acknowledge the mere existence of Skins. So without further ado, let's get this started. Skins is originally set in Bristol, where much like the majority of UK cities, accents vary not just by region, but a lot of the time by class.
Butter.
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 Listen. Butter.
Butter.
That's it.
This is much less common in the USA, where accents are less varied by this aspect of life. The upper-class US citizen tends to lose some of their regional quirks, but the differences are to a far lesser extent than the UK, and very difficult to present with enough difference on film. The dynamic between the private school Abigail and Tony is fundamentally based upon this class dichotomy. The comedy of Abigail's interaction with the main cast comes from the clear distinction between the working-class characters who tremble at the sight of a grand, and the snooty, confusingly spoken posh girl who pronunciates comically.
These must be your friends. Sorry?
This doesn't work at all in the US, where those differences are too difficult to present, and so Abigail totally falls flat, being reduced to cringeworthy and pathetic.
Oh yeah, those doters are just, oh my god, so clitoral. You're still coming to my party, right?
I am.
Because my friends went to Martha's Vineyard. We're gonna get like so totally retarded on drum and bass.
That sounds great, Tabitha. I'll see you then.
Mambo.
Mambo.
There's also an unnerving usage of censorship. The US version of Skins is far too tame, and you can't get the gritty and powerful tone of the UK version when you have to use obnoxious beeps as a replacement for the F word. Just look at how awkwardly a lot of these lines are delivered when put side by side.
You take me for a complete James Blunt, don't you?
You think I'm your bitch, don't you? That's what you think, huh? Huh? Is that what you think?
Do you want it?
I want to fucking piss.
I want some pancakes, Jimmy.
I want to take a dump in my own house!
Another issue is just how unattractive Tony is in this version, and I would never attack the physical appearance of an actor, that's all well and good. I'm purely talking about his acting and dialogue. The original Tony was a total cunt, but his snarky and confident way of talking almost forced you into liking him. He's so successful at manipulating people, and you can absolutely see why. Whilst the US's Tony attempts to mimic this manipulation, unlike the English one, you can't see why anybody would fall for his tricks, because he's just so corny and unfunny and cocky, but not in a way that could ever be perceived as attractive. He is the total antithesis of the character that people make fun of when you have an American high school jock in mind. A totally bare and one-dimensional piece of shit, whose one-liners are more akin to Sonic the Hedgehog than Tony Stonem.
My name's Tony. Everybody's got an opinion about me. Teachers, parents, my dad. He doesn't see the irony when he calls me a son of a bitch. That just makes fucking with him all the more fun. Listen, I know you like to pluck the lady harp. That's boring. You're mysterious.
What?
You hold back. Nobody gets in. It's mysterious.
I was here auditioning for the chamber choir. I heard they needed male parts in the bass section. And you know what? They do. They really do.
Since we're still here at the beginning of the show, I do feel as if it would be appropriate to point out that the intro to the US version of Skins is genuinely incredible and absolutely nails what the show is all about, with suitable music to boot. In fact, to give credit where it's due, the music is pretty consistently great, and probably the best part of the series. MTV made the confusing decision to rid of Maxie and Cassie in this version despite their popularity, replacing them with Taya and Katie. Taya's a lesbian, but she also gets with Tony at one point, and everyone is annoyingly in love with her. Anyway, let's narrow this down for a second. Maxie absolutely shits on Tay, and the removal of Cassie immediately makes Stan much less interesting than Sid. Now, it is my personal opinion that Cassie was removed consciously because the team was scared of portraying an anorexic on American television, which is honestly fair enough because there's no chance that MTV would have handled it as well, and we'll get to the controversy later, trust me. Now, this could be a stretch, but I think Maxie was removed simply because the team didn't want to write a gay man into the show. Taya is a totally tokenized tool of a lesbian, who is rarely ever actually seen with women. It's mostly boys, sort of portraying the archetypal male fantasy homosexual woman. But the issue here is that it results in a totally horrid character who you loathe to see on screen. Maxie didn't have a bad bone in his body. Even if you didn't particularly like his character, there was no reason to hate it. And his friendship with Anwar was layered, leading to some great religious themes centered around homosexuality and Muslimhood.
We need those drugs.
Look! There's no drugs, Muslim boy.
Cheers, man.
You fucking prick. I can't believe you are putting that Muslim bullshit on me.
What?
What I do is against God. You're the fucking worst Muslim ever.
I pray 5 times a day.
For what? More pork chops? Oh, fuck it, let's get a drink. Yeah, of course Alan wants you doing class A's from Sid's ass.
Just shut up, yeah? You're talking about my religion.
It all culminates in an amazingly unexpected yet satisfying acceptance of Maxie by Anwar's parents in one of the most wholesome moments of the series. Definitely one of the most underrated scenes.
It's a fucking stupid, messed up world. I've got my God. He speaks to me every day. Some things I just can't work out, so I leave them be. Okay? Even if I think they're wrong, because I know one day you'll make me understand. I've got that trust.
You can't just claim a character to be homosexual, have a couple people throw slurs at her and leave it at that. You actually need to show some kind of commitment. Don't present her in an active and constant pursuit of men and actively enjoying sex with Tony, especially retrospectively, particularly when her interactions with women are so minimal that if the characters weren't constantly reminding you that Taya is in fact supposed to be a lesbian, you'd assume she was straight.
Yeah. You explained, right? You don't like boys? Still, it's nice to be jumped like that sometimes.
This is simply a clear-cut example of tell don't show at its finest. The absence of Maxie is not only replaced by the redundant Tay, but also makes the dynamic with Anwar far less interesting, which directly negatively affects his character as well. The characters are dogshit and the team keeps making awful choices, in this case due to a potential cowardice presented by the team. There is one moment, to be fair, where Taya and her love interest Betty kiss in the school, but it's immediately soured by a group of boys laughing at the act, with Michelle's supposedly righteous response being this.
Hey guys, why don't you all go screw yourselves in the ass? It's like you want to, the way you're all touching each other and everything.
How is an insult that has its basis in ridiculing homosexuality an appropriate line to write into this scene as the right thing to say? Fair enough if Taya was annoyed by this and they showed it, but no, this is meant to display the group's closeness and chemistry.
Change my socks like I changed that letter.
I haven't spoken too much about the comedy as of yet, so let's compare two scenes of the same event from the shows, featuring a fan-favourite character, Chris. Now, Chris is a lot less likable in the US version, and the reason for this is that his lines are delivered far too plainly. Let's take this scene where Chris is trying to get a refund for a trash DVD player. In the UK version, Chris's awkward and jittery approach towards the receptionist is what makes the joke work.
Look, man, right, I bought it yesterday, yeah, and I remember you, right, because you've got a very good face for memorizing. Right, so yeah, I bought it from you and you were chuffed to sell it.
Now when you watch the US version, the difference is clear as day.
Look, man, okay, so I bought it yesterday and I remember you because you have a very good face for memorizing.
The joke is lost completely. It might as well have not even been there. He says it way too confidently, so there's zero humor to be found anymore. On top of that, the American interpretation of the scene contained no dead air, whereas the UK version wasn't afraid to really wallow in its silence, truly embracing every single second of awkwardness. In Skins US, the reaction is so quick that you don't even have enough time for the comedy to honestly settle in.
You were chuffed to sell it.
There's a Pop-Tart in the CD drawer.
Take it out.
And you were dying to sell it.
Yeah, there's a toaster pastry in the CD drawer.
Take it out, clean it.
Because I would have told them not to take it back, because you've wrecked it.
I kept the receipt. No, you won't, because I'll have told them not to take it back, because you've wrecked it. I kept the receipt? Your receipts don't cover snack pastry.
So you want to get rid of your zits?
How?
Right. Piss on a bit of toilet paper and wipe your face with it. Works better than Clearasil.
Tried it. Thank you for calling it Smith's and Electrics.
I'll tell you how to get rid of your zits.
How?
You piss on a piece of toilet paper and wipe your face with it. It works better than Clearasil.
Tried it.
Have you tried shitting on a piece of
It should also be noted just how unfriendly Chris comes across in the US. It's so much easier to enjoy the company of the endearing and charmingly awkward UK version, rather than the angry and bitter American one. Also, it's called popping your cherry, not losing your cherry.
I mean, Stan already lost his cherry.
There's a very clear issue here that irks me to no end. The Americans ruined Sid Jenkins. They decimated my boy. They made him a massive prick. Stanley is a total wanker who uses KD's infatuation with him against her. He uses this unrequited love to basically coerce drugs off of this damaged and drug-addicted character who is as damaged by drugs as Cassie is by her eating disorders. Because if you don't remember, KD is the Cassie equivalent. Even though Sid would do things that were endlessly annoying for the audience, this was simply a result of dramatic irony within the script and the denseness of Sid as an awkward character, because us, as watchers, know how Cassie feels about Sid, but Sid, being the little boy that he is, can't get it through his skull that someone has feelings for him, partially because he's too focused on Michelle, and that, all things considered, is Sid's tragic flaw for the first series. The fundamental difference between Stan and Sid is the intent behind their actions, because while Sid is neglecting Cassie unintentionally and unknowingly, Stan is exploiting KD for drugs consciously, even if he is partially peer pressured. He shows absolutely zero care towards KD, despite being completely aware of her feelings towards him.
Wonder if you want to go to a party over there?
With you?
Sure. I'll be there. You go, you'll be there. So, sure, yeah. Be there together.
Is this our date?
Huh?
You said we should have a date.
Was it either? Hell, why not? It's a date.
My day is great now. Got promoted.
Stop flirting with the boy. Ask her, man.
That's cool.
Ask her. Ask her now,
do
man.
you think you bring some of your pills?
Pills?
Come on. Come on. Stan.
Yeah, we always have such fun with the pills.
Sid at least had the gall to care a little bit.
But you see, it's like nobody's fucking business. And it's not exactly like anybody cares, so...
I care.
And on that same vein, KD is treated quite horribly, consistently by the entire cast, and it really makes you wonder why she's even a part of the group, why she even bothers staying friends with these people. It made a lot more sense in Cassie's case because she was notably less bright, less aware, and also beneath it all, loved by her friends.
Oh my God! It's Cassie! Check me, please don't take me. Please won't protect me.
MTV seems to think that they can just copy the events of the original show despite the radical differences in characterization. It's not a difficult principle to follow, that when you change the characters, the show can't go exactly how it goes in one with different characters, because that means the chronology will become horrendously forced and unnatural and grossly nonsensical.
She said, how you doing? Welcome to Candy Town.
I think I finally sussed out the problem with the chemistry between the American characters. MTV seems to confuse harsh friendships, dramatic banter, and tough love for maliciously intended action. I'm not talking about something like Tony cheating on Michelle. That was straight up meant to be debauchery and douchebaggery. But in this instance, I'm talking about Sid and his father. The fatherly bond between two family members is a complex one where the power dynamic is far too in favor of Sid's father, who is far too strongly worded and pig-headed. A downright awful person, but one who at his very core loves his son Sid and truly believes he's doing the best for him. Not only are Sid's actions way out of proportion in the MTV remake, but as are his dad's. Upon Stanley being prosecuted with Grand Theft Auto, despite being given the easy opportunity to keep the crime specific to the family, Stan's father does everything in his power to get his son arrested.
I know these charges seem pretty scary, but in reality, he'll only be charged with driving without a license. Since you own the stolen vehicle, you just have to sign this form here, and the Grand Theft Auto charges go away.
Why would I do that?
This leads to a US exclusive plotline that includes a court hearing, and it's probably one of the best additions, to be fair. I genuinely enjoyed the outcome of said court's judge denouncing Sid's father.
What does every bastard who has ever lived have in common? His father is a bastard, and he never broke the cycle. Break the cycle, Stanley.
Of all the episodes in this remake, this one is definitely one of the least offensive, as it includes a lot of serviceable added content, like the one I just mentioned, and what is kept in, namely the Sid, Tony, Abigail, and Michelle conflict, is only slightly worse than its UK origins. This episode starts off with one of the only jokes in the series that made me laugh.
Shut the f*** up!
And the school trip is to Canada this time rather than Russia. Upon learning this and the strong start, I mistakenly thought that this would be the moment MTV learns that they can't remake Skins, and that this premise would only work if the franchise became its own thing. Unfortunately, they have to defame the sweetest, most innocent, quirky character that has ever come out of Skins, that being the ever-so-lovely Chris, once again, who for some fucking reason finds it to be appropriate and humorous to tell airport security that Anwar, or Abood here, has a bomb keisted within his anus, spurring on a violent search that Abood had initially feared due to the typicality of racial prejudice.
Cool. I usually get put in the room, you know, the one with no windows.
Welcome to Canada.
I guess he didn't tell you about the bomb up his ass.
It was completely out of character and was an absolutely ridiculous choice for the character of Chris to invoke such a thing. And this is what I meant when I mentioned the confusion between harsh friendship and douchebaggery. The rest of the episode is actually rather good though, and falls in line with my initial assumption for it. Other than that one dud at the beginning, this episode really gets the US Office treatment, where you can definitely see the loose few and far between inspirations from the UK version, but for the most part, these are their own characters. The show has its own ideas, and it works brilliantly. I think I would actually recommend you give episode 6 a watch. It's exactly what a less gritty and more American interpretation of Skins should be, and I wish I could say this was a turning point for the remake, but unfortunately...
Good news, good news, good news, that's all I wanna hear.
It's almost as if MTV found out exactly at the point of episode 7 that there was no shot for a second season, because from here on out the remake shoddily attempts to cram 2 seasons worth of content into much of these remaining episodes. The most prominent example is Stan talking to Katie online and misinterpreting a form of cheating, much like Sid and Cassie in the early days of the second series. It seems as though this was included in an attempt to justify and understand Stan's mini-affair with Michelle later in the episode, but there are a lot of problems with this. For one, Stan and Katie do not have the same relationship Sid did with Cassie at any point in this series. There is a blatant lack of chemistry. The characters are rarely seen with one another, and there's nothing to imply a romantic or non-platonic relationship, as opposed to the explicit boyfriend and girlfriend dynamic in the UK Skins video chat, thereby allowing us to understand Sid's outrage at the misunderstanding.
Nobody ever loves anyone properly, do they?
On top of this, the misunderstanding is far less suggestive, and to misconstrue it goes further than a lack of trust and enters the realm of pure stupidity. This lack of romance also means that Stan didn't really need an excuse to get with Michelle, which had already happened just 2 episodes ago. All this leads to is a confused and preposterously rushed level of pacing that frankly makes such little sense, that it's difficult to even comprehend how anybody thought any of this was a good idea. Despite a slight improvement in quality past the halfway point of this show, the remaining 2 episodes diminish any semblance of hope that MTV can remake British television, because on top of being the worst episodes we'll be discussing today, they're also some of the worst television I've seen in a very long time. Episode 9 makes the strange decision of dedicating an entire episode to Tina, the US's answer to Angie, the psychology teacher who Chris has an affair with. Now in the original, this is not only played more so for laughs, but is also probably one of the weakest aspects of the series, aside from the sketch conflict, which thankfully isn't touched upon here. The fact that the Angie subplot is not necessarily expanded upon and written with a self-aware level of cringe, humour and inappropriate tones is what makes the relationship work to the extent that it does, which is admittedly not much in my opinion. On the contrary, Tina seems as though she was written solely to appease the archetypal teenage fantasy of fucking your teacher, because the relationship isn't played for laughs, or maybe it is and I just didn't notice because it failed to make me laugh even once. Dedicating an entire episode to a fundamentally and universally uncomfortable stereotype of teacher-student relations to most people will only make them concerned, and this can work if some sort of appropriate commentary is being presented, which needless to say, it certainly isn't. We are yet to have even discussed the worst part of this story, which is the absolutely blasphemous treatment of Chris, who comes across as nothing more than a stupid, desperate loser with absolutely zero character and charisma. I can't even begin to describe how much better our Chris is, and considering all of the characters that were cut out and changed in the remake, it genuinely blows my mind that Chris was chosen to remain. Chris cannot be lived up to, especially with a team who have such little understanding of what made him so great to begin with. Of all the characters to replace, Chris should have been first on that list. Alright, and then there's also the little itty bitty fact that where Skins US is set, Chris is very much under the age of consent, thereby making Tina both a paedophile and a literal statutory rapist.
That's her. Tina Nolan, you're under arrest.
Are you joking? I'm being arrested for breaking a stupid toy?
No. We're arresting you for statutory rape.
Which is made especially worse by how seriously the relationship is being taken by the surrounding characters. There's actually even a heavy acknowledgement of this crime as Tina gets arrested later in the episode and interrogated by the police, but it's all treated like a silly little joke.
You don't be ashamed of what happened. It wasn't your fault. You're the victim of a sex crime.
Yeah, I'm a victim.
She hurt you, right?
Yeah, she hurt me.
Scarred you for life.
Probably.
Just tell me what happened. I'll make her pay, son.
She blew me.
I knew it! She gave you a blowjob.
No, she blew me off when I tried to hook up with her. Said it was inappropriate and told me to grow up.
And all of the students cover and hide the evidence for this paedophile. What a great and wholesome moment that.
I got a black ski mask, but I don't ski, but I snowboard, dash an MC off peak.
I'd like to start this segment by playing a clip from a similar video to this one by Yara Zaid, who does a great job explaining some of the slanderous changes to this final episode.
They know exactly where to find Yura because Chris recognizes a symbol. I don't know. And they go to a club where terrible music is playing and a fight randomly breaks out. Tony sees Yura projected on the screen and he starts crying, but then he just gives up looking for her. That's the end for him. Stan seems to be the only one with a brain that works because he's the only one who thinks maybe I should go backstage because there's more club back there. And guess what? Yura's fine. With no Josh, with no Maxie, you have to wonder, why did any of this happen?
Is he here?
What are you talking about? Yes, he's here, Yura. We are all here.
What's he doing?
He's going crazy.
Good. Got out of bed then.
How could you do that to him?
That's right. No Josh, no Maxie, no revenge plot against Tony. Yura kidnaps herself. For what? We start this episode off with Yura wanting to help her brother out of his slump. And from what she says here, it would seem like this entire plan was hatched just to get him out of bed. But the problem is that it doesn't make a lot of sense. She clearly cares about her brother and his well-being, and I doubt she'd want to hurt him, so what's the convoluted plan for? Why hurt him more? And without the Josh storyline, without Tony learning his lesson as a result of this, it does nothing for his character either. What is this plot point supposed to do?
You never understand anything, Stan, do you?
No, I don't.
You stupid dildo. He looks up to you. It's you he loves.
Okay, so if she didn't do it to get him out of bed, she did it to show Stanley that Tony loves him. But why though? I thought the problem was Michelle or Taya. What's Stanley got to do with it? There's no clear explanation on her reasoning for this plan, and it's probably the most frustrating thing about this entire show. You didn't need this plot point, and you've proven that you don't mind making big changes. Let it go. Convinced he doesn't need anyone, Tony is surprised by how much his sudden isolation affects him. Instead of showing that, let's over-explain it. Despite fucking around with Sid like he doesn't care about him, Tony reaches out to Sid first in his time of need. Sid really is his best friend, and Tony really does need him despite insisting that he doesn't need anyone. Instead of showing that, let's just have Yura explain it.
He came round, right? He asked you to help find me.
So?
Cheers, Yara. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's why I literally stole like 3 minutes off of your video. I'd like to deliberate further on Effy's Generation 1 destruction, and I specified the first generation because Effy's depiction in Generation 2 was significantly weaker. In the first gen, Effy is a young yet dark character, the total epitome of an irresponsible, popular, hedonistic young girl who hangs around with the wrong people and makes a lot of bad choices. But down to her core, she totally adores her brother, and the chemistry between them is powerfully poignant as opposed to the non-existent one in the remake, which confuses darkness, dreariness, silence, and mystery with utter boredom and a lack of development, simply opting to imply the character has never spoken a word in her life. And when she finally does speak in this episode, her voice is so high-pitched and acted so childishly that it's impossible to regard her as someone to be taken seriously.
What's he doing?
He's going crazy.
Good. Got it to bed then.
The climax of Season 1 arguably has the most drama in the entirety of Skins, period, and so much of its best bits are completely lost in the American version, which is so confused at this point by what to keep and what to toss that it's honestly comparable to an indecisive customer at a buffet, who's also blind. Anwar's family drama, the religious commentary on homosexuality, Cassie's letter, Sid at the clinic, Effy and Michelle, Sid and Tony's fight, the bus ramming into Tony, the entirety of Anwar's party, all of which are nowhere to be seen, instead replaced with singular, horrible, shallow voids of any content. Useless, meaningless, boring, sloppy plot that could have been condensed to less than 10 minutes. The ending is an interpretation of the UK finale's Wild World, sung by Sid, of course, an absurdist yet oddly perfect way of ending the series, and to be honest, everything after Stan's confrontation with Yura is all good. And there's actually a really great sequence with Tears for Fears' Shout, sung by Stan and Katie. Now before I present my closing thoughts on MTV's Skins US, it's time to finally address the potential dangers of this show, and the massive controversy it spans for both the country's film industry and for the company as a whole. It's no secret that Skins US was never renewed for a second season, but the biggest question regarding this is whether or not it was the controversy or the fact that no one wanted to watch it that killed the MTV remake. MTV did a stellar job marketing the series, with the most expensive ad campaign it's ever produced, and coming out with an impressively high viewer base of 3.26 million for the pilot episode, which was about 3 times as much as the UK ever had, doubling as one of the most successful episodes of any MTV show to date. And this makes sense because, to give credit where it's due, the marketing was faithful, raw, verging on genuinely perfect. Unfortunately for the company, the fan base was nowhere near consistent, with every preceding episode leading to lower ratings and fewer views. Viewers plummeted to under 1 million in no time at all, which, despite being similar to a UK viewer base, encapsulates a far smaller percentage of the population, as the American market is notoriously heavier than ours. And this was an amount that simply could not be continued. The third advertiser to pull out was the chewing gum company Wrigley, following Taco Bell and General Motors. They issued an official statement reading, "Wrigley has decided to suspend any advertising during MTV Skins, as it was never our intent to endorse any content that could offend consumers. Any ads that had previously aired during the show were part of a broader advertising plan with the network." After the decrease in viewers, the egregious marketing campaign began to reveal its overly expected skins, so to speak, making profit much harder to achieve. Several Skins apps and an entire website dedicated to the drama outside of the MTV domain were programmed and publicized. MTV issued a statement regarding the cancellation. Skins is a global television phenomenon that, unfortunately, didn't connect with a US audience as much as we hoped. We admire the work that the series creator Brian Elsley did in adapting the show for MTV, and appreciate the core audience that embraced it. But why exactly was there so much controversy? And why did the show fail to the extent that it did? Well, without a doubt, the most contentious aspect of Skins US was its supposed borderline child pornography accusations, which I will try my best to explain as adequately as possible, before weighing in with my own opinions. One example of a scene that terrified advertisers was a moment where Chris ran down the street naked after supposedly overdosing on Viagra, while simultaneously being filmed from behind. The issue with this was that during the filming of the scene, Jesse Carreri, who played said character, was only 17 years old, as opposed to Bristol's Joe Dempsey, who was 19 years of age. Viacom executive producers would go on to order the company to tone down the raciness of the series. That same month, the Parents Television Council, or PTC, which is an actual thing in America and something that has way more influence than it realistically should, but I digress, this is a topic for another video, ordered an investigation into the drama, counting 42 depictions and references to drugs and alcohol in the pilot episode. Skins was targeted by the PTC, who claimed that despite the MA rating for Skins, MTV appears to be deliberately targeting teens with its marketing campaign, said President Tim Winter. Skins may very well be the most dangerous show for children that we have ever seen. The marketing campaign itself makes light of lying to parents and participating in all manner of harmful, irresponsible, illegal, and adult-themed behavior. The trailers we have seen thus far make sexual objects of almost every single one of its characters and asks not only for reviewers to approve, but to actively participate by posting their own secret stories. Season 1 of Skins was so full of explicit content. Viewers retreated to some form of sex, violence, drugs, alcohol, or profanity once every 22 seconds of airtime. Graphic sexual content was the most pervasive, followed by drug-related references and depiction. It took 53 episodes of broadcast programming to find the equivalent amount of drug content that aired in only 8 Skins episodes. The shocking content was trumped only by the fact that the program featured teenage actors and was marketed to teenage children. We are grateful to every member of the public who helped us drive an economic stake through the graphic content on the program, the likes of which never deserves to see the light of day again, Winter concluded. An MTV spokeswoman, Jenny Caddis, did not address the executive's fears that the show was breaking the law, but admitted future shows were a work in progress, responding to the PTC, specifying that Skins is a show that addressed real-world issues confronting teens in a frank way. We review all of our shows and work with all of our producers on an ongoing basis to ensure that shows comply with laws and community standards. We are confident that episodes of Skins will not only comply with all applicable legal requirements, but also with our responsibilities to the viewers. The PTC even went as far as to send a letter to US Attorney General Eric Holder. In the letter, the PTC said, "It is clear that Viacom has knowingly produced material that may well be in violation of federal statutes related to child pornography and the exploitation of children." Now, before I dissect the legality of Skins and its presentation of child nudity, I'd like to mention that the remainder of this conversation will now be tainted by my personal opinion. First things first, I would be far less concerned by the depictions of drugs and alcohol from the comfort of a child's home, or any young person's viewership of the remake, as I believe that it would be difficult to argue that these behaviors are encouraged or romanticized by the property. Rather, I would be more concerned with minors directly involved in the production. I also refuse to accept arguments that because the parents of the actors involved have approved their child's participation, that their participation is okay. A lot of parents may do things that may not be entirely beneficial for their children if they see an opportunity to advance their children's careers in the entertainment industry. That's a sad truth, one which we have unfortunately seen time and time again, and that may be what's going on here. It should also be said that unaired episodes do not act to mollify either the law or public opinion, as simply shooting and editing this footage could potentially be in violation. Now, despite the undertones here, we have yet to specify exactly how legal the show is, or how close MTV got to breaking child pornography laws, so let's move on to that. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll be taking the majority of my information and opinion from Ronald Collins, a professor at the University of Washington School of Law and a specialist in First Amendment issues, who leads me towards a disagreement towards the PTC's assertions and accusations. If you don't have distribution, it seems to me that one of the criteria of the Ferber case is significantly missing. If the child pornography rules are to be expanded in this way, then it seems that any number of entirely legitimate productions, stage productions, movie productions, and what have you, it stands that the freedom protected there would be jeopardized. You see, for Skins to qualify as child pornography, evidence would need to exist that children had been sexually abused during production. Say, a shot featuring a simulated masturbation actually involving a real-life teen masturbating. It's legally important to consider whether the show is contributing to the creation of a market for child pornography. Ultimately, I believe that the PTC are nothing more than one of the clearest demonstrations of the cultural contrast between British and American film industries, of which the Brits are clearly less strict and more lenient. I'll play you you a clip from one of my previous videos which I would recommend viewing if you want more information on why the industries are so different. In the UK, we have something called a TV license, which is used to fund non-profit companies like the BBC and keep them running. The reason for this is that it prevents companies from creating content purely for profit and focus more so on genuine quality. It's essentially a yearly tax of 160 quid that's responsible for the lack of advertisements on the BBC. This is important because British TV is very creator-driven, and the writers have a lot of control over the property, a power that is rarely seen in the States. Ultimately, I wholeheartedly dismiss the idea that the series violates federal law, and would go as far as to say that such accusations verge on dangerous. I think the critics, if they say that this is offensive, are unwise. Sure, perhaps a lot of people can agree that it sets a bad example for teenagers. Maybe not me, but I definitely see where they're coming from. But to call this child pornography is to demean the very meaning of that, and to also demean what it means to commit sexual abuse against children genuinely. Skins US is not a good show, and it looks horrible in comparison to its UK originator. However, as a standalone thing, ignoring the British counterpart, it would be difficult to make the claim that the show is insulting or radically low in quality, as there are certainly a cacophony of aspects that I genuinely appreciate as both a Skins fan and a film fan. Part of me wishes that we were able to see a renewal for further Skins production, as I honestly would have adored something similar to The Office treatment, because fundamentally, Skins US's biggest downfall is that it is a remake, and a bad one at that. Its strongest aspects are without a doubt the parts that divert the most from the original, though there are certainly exceptions, such as the entire character of Tay. My closing statements are this: if you're ever to remake Skins, don't get rid of Maxie or Cassie, and don't fuck with Sid or Chris, and don't even attempt to make it in America, unless you want to be accused of shooting child pornography. If you really want to remake Skins, this is how you actually win. Now pay close attention, because what I'm about to tell you is the secret to a perfect Skins remake. Truthfully, the Skins formula is far too meticulously constructed, and not open to change unless you plan on ruining the entire structure, which to make work, would end up being something that doesn't even resemble the original show. So to sum this video up in 3 words, don't even try.